Good morning. It's a significant day that marks a real turning point in the struggle for liberation in South Africa. On this Human Rights Day, exactly 62 years ago, apartheid police opened fire on protesting Sharpeville residents, leaving 69 bodies in their wake and 180 others injured. Within hours, the massacre made world headlines, and this saw the protest against past laws intensify elsewhere. The violent acts on this day would go on to inspire the drafting of South Africa's very progressive Bill of Rights. And for many of us today, we get the day off, but we have to consider the story of Sharpeville because historians and authors Zikhona Valela finds herself in Ladysmith to ponder the significance of it all. Zikhona, thank you so much for joining us. You know, I get the sense that many people who are not working today, or even some who are, don't really remember what Human Rights Day is about or what happened on this day 62 years ago.
Absolutely, Annika, and thank you for having me. Good morning to all the listeners and viewers at home. I think it's because, you know, sometimes when we misname significant events, that can lead to the losing of the context. Now, it is understandable why this day is called Human Rights Day, because the gross human rights violations occurred on this day 62 years ago, which was actually a Monday, so it's exactly the day. However, you know, when we kind of name these things, I mean, during the apartheid era, during the era of resistance, there was, you know, this day was commemorated as Sharpeville Day. And I think when we kind of take seriously the importance of context and correctly naming things, we are then able to kind of constantly speak to the ways in which various organizations, like in this instance, the Pan-Africanist Congress, contributed to where we are today. And so I think, you know, that's why it's understandable why things like this get lost. And also the, especially when, you know, certain, you know, mistakes are made in terms of how we teach the history, and it also in terms of sometimes people constantly, you know, taking almost partisan types of point of views to this day, because I think it still remains a contentious type of event for the various political organizations that were in existence at the time. It was called a reckless move. I mean, Sobukwe put out a press release on behalf of the PAC and extended an invitation for all movements to join with them, and they didn't. They rejected that thing as opportunist. The Secretary General, I think at the time, Dumanokwe, rejected that thing, rejected the protest and so on. So I think when we kind of explain in more detail how these things happened, we then get to see, we also get to even commemorate some of the people that were part of that movement and gave their lives and led and kind of laid their bodies on the line. People like Datunya Kanetsolo, who actually led and was a branch secretary of the PSC in Sharpeville. I mean, this was, you know, the year before this this event, almost a year before this event, you know, the PAC was formed and they got to work to kind of raise support and mobilize people towards this positive action campaign, which is what it was called at the time, of kind of rejecting the pass laws, leaving passes at home and going to kind of hand yourself over to the cops. So I think when we kind of rename things to what they actually were, we kind of get to commemorate and honor the various people that helped us get to where we are at this point, where we can kind of take forward their gains for better gains for all of us.
When and why, I mean, context-wise, you seem to indicate that it was a political move. When and why was it changed from Sharpeville Day to Human Rights Day?
Well, it was changed after 1994. And this is obviously because, you know, you see the government of the time kind of wanting us to understand that, look, human rights violations occurred. I mean, the right to life, the right to dignity, these people were just shot at like they weren't, like they didn't mean anything to anyone. So it's kind of understandable, but I think when you do that kind of renaming, I guess for the sake of non-partisanship, you still have to do the work of contextualizing and reinforcing, why this day is honored, why we take a day out of working to kind of observe the contributions and the sacrifice that happened. And I think that's what's missing. Because I think when you say Sharpeville Day, I think it becomes easier to kind of raise curiosity around what happened, around the fact that 69 people died that day and more than 180 people were injured. And then about a week later, there was a solidarity march in Cape Town led by Philip Khosana that is, that was kind of like 30,000 people strong. So I think that kind of day would have probably been a human rights day, would have been more appropriate as a human rights day, because that was literally an act of solidarity with the people of Sharpeville.
Zikhona, in my view, you can't go forward without looking back. What are the critical teachings, in summary, for you about what happened on this day in Sharpeville?
So, when the PAC concluded that it would, launch this positive action campaign, there were a couple of points that were that they were trying to kind of put across against the regime. So things like the carrying of passes, this call to action that was saying we are not going to be foreigners in our own land as African people. We are speaking out against the social ills of our society, the ways in which Black people are treated, that are creating these conditions in which these social ills thrive, is what we are standing up against. And I think the reality is that in our contemporary setting, many of those social ills remain. The high crime rates can never be delinked to the fact that there is still gross inequality in this country. So I think when we remember the sacrifice of those people who marched at Sharpeville, and the many other people are also marching, because there were supposed to be various marches across the country, across the strongholds of the PAC. Some didn't happen, like in Langa, because of the police blocking that. So I think when we remember Sharpeville, we must also remember to kind of recommit ourselves as a society to ending those social ills. So far, the past laws are gone, but I think there's so much structurally that needs to be addressed.
Thanks so much, Zikhona Valela, for your time, historian there, and we'll actually be discussing how far we've come with Amnesty International a little bit later. Thanks so much for that interview.